Good morning. Welcome to today's what is today's? Welcome to today's Horizon apps and user experience. We're going to give everybody just a few minutes to get into the room, and we'll kick off here a few minutes after 11. Welcome, and on behalf of everyone at XenTegra, we appreciate you spending some time with us today. Good morning. I see more and more folks coming in, so just wanted to say welcome. We're going to kick off here just a few minutes after the hour. I appreciate everyone spending some time with us today. I'm going to go ahead and unmute everyone as we're waiting and as people are coming in the room. Let's do a round of quick introductions. I'd like to know who's all here, and I guess let's introduce ourselves, and then also, what would you want to learn today? Like, what are you most interested in? So I'll start with Alexander. Good morning, Alexander. How are you?
Good morning, Philip. I'm good. Yourself? Good morning,
Doing
Barry.
really well.
Hey, Alexander. Good to meet you.
Good to meet you. I'm work for HSS Enterprises. We're new to working with XenTegra. They were recommended to us by our VMware account representatives. This whole Horizon, I guess, seminar, I'm looking at and investing more efforts and time because we're looking at migrating off of Citrix.
Okay.
So having said that, being familiar with, I worked when it used to be called Horizon View, but now fast forward 10 years later, here I am again working with Horizon. And I kind of want to see from a spectator's perspective, understanding what are the topics we're talking about, what are the majority questions that people have. And in terms of unique cases, that comes when we're going to start migrating our applications, our VDAs into Horizon.
Fantastic. So today we're going to focus on two key areas, which is around settings and profile management, and then the app packaging. We've got another webinar that we did a couple months back. I will send you a YouTube video around it. It's going to cover, Horizon 101. And so if you're used to View, this will be a good refresher of what all's changed and evolved.
Okay.
But yeah, that I think between the two should answer a lot of your questions today.
Quick question, Philip. I don't know who else is on this. I don't mean to take everyone's time up, but with Horizon, do they leverage FS Logic, or does VMware? Does Horizon have their own technology that manages profiles?
So yes and no. So we have a technology in the VMware portfolio called Dynamic Environment Manager. It's going to manage settings, but not necessarily full profiles.
Right.
Microsoft doesn't give us a lot of choice when it comes to FS Logics. That's really the supported way if you're a Microsoft 365 shop.
Yeah.
So it's going to be some combination, but there's lots of opportunity in the profile management space. Again, DEM is going to be like the settings. Your profiles can be more of a folder redirection and things like that for the data, but then also FS Logics for the Office containers.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, Alexander, are you not happy with FS Logics, or you just haven't implemented it yet?
We haven't implemented it yet. I've worked with it in my lab at home, just to understand this containerized solution, how it works, what are the difference between actually having roaming profiles versus using FS Logics.
Right.
I did my research on it. I haven't been able to implement it in our production environment. But what I hear from it, Citrix says we can either go with WEM or we can go with FS Logics. In either case, I heard good things about them. I just haven't been able to apply it in our production environment yet, or our lab environment in my company.
Understood. Well, what I would suggest in terms of next steps, what we should probably do is get Phil and I on a separate call with you, and we can walk you through kind of the pros, the cons of FS Logics versus, other profile solutions that are out there, including, the roaming profiles that you mentioned.
Yes, that'd be excellent. Thank you, Barry.
Yep, we can absolutely help with that.
All right, Alexander, we appreciate you you joining us. Anas, it's good to see you again. Anas is on the expanded XenTegra team. How are you doing today?
Hello, Philip. I'm good. How are you doing? Hi, Betty.
Hi, Nas. Good to talk again.
Calvin, how are you doing today?
There's two Calvins. Let's talk to Mr. Jones first.
Oh, that's you're exactly right.
Yeah,
There
I'm fine. I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. Who are you with, Calvin?
Sorry?
What company are you with?
I think we might have lost him, or he's on mute.
We can run on to Calvin Nguyen. Calvin, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Good morning, everybody. I'm Kevin Nguyen. I work for VMware. I'm an EUC solution engineer. I'm trying to join here to help the rest of the team here.
Well, we appreciate you joining us today and look forward to anything you have to add as we go through the presentations, the labs, things like that today.
Yeah, it's perfect. And then to the gentleman that was asking, we have a blog from VMware that talk about integration DEM with FSLogic, a guide that's step-by-step for you to follow.
Calvin, if you wouldn't mind, would you mind digging up that the blog post and putting it in the chat for the group at large? That'd be great.
Yeah,
if you could do that.
Yeah, let me do
Please.
that right now, and you can put to the rest of the team.
Oh, there you go. That was fast.
Yeah, I already got it prepared.
Thank you very
Awesome.
much.
Who else do we have? Let's see. Jeremy, good morning.
Hopefully there's not more than one Jeremy on this call, or maybe hopefully there is. I don't know, but I'll start talking. I'm Jeremy. I am a systems administrator with Tennessee Technological University. A long time Horizon and View admin. Jumped on this call specifically because of the discussion around profiles and settings and that sort of thing. Our environment traditionally has been non-persistent, and we purposely didn't do anything to preserve profiles or anything like that. With some of the other places that we would like to leverage our VDI infrastructure, that's not as good of a fit as it had been in the past for predominantly what was either a physical lab or a BYOD lab experience that we were trying to do. So it made sense there to not do it. For some of the other things that are coming along, it's looking more and more likely like there's a need to actually do something to manage and persist that profile information. So this definitely grabbed my attention in that regard.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, hopefully we've got a couple of different things. As a company, XenTegra, we work really hard to try and make a non-persistent desktop act like a persistent desktop to preserve that user interface and all the settings and the data. We'll also tell you, don't be afraid of persistent desktops too. I mean, they have a use case and they certainly, exist out there. So we have solutions that can help manage those. Not talking about it specifically today, but Workspace ONE's a great way to manage those persistent desktops as well. So super to have you here. Hopefully we hit those highlights for you and you get to learn some things from the lab as well. Liam Jones, how are you today?
Either Liam's a little gun shy or he's on mute or he's gone to the bathroom, getting ready for the big day.
That's right. Robert Sampson, how are you today?
Make everyone shy, Phil. Everyone's shy.
We're really nice. We don't bite.
So Robert doesn't have a mic or a cam, so he's good to go. We're on to Scott.
Yep. Scott, how are you?
Hey, how you doing? Just visiting to see how you guys are doing. I was an SC at VMware for 8 years covering for Horizon, so I always like to hear other people's perspectives. So it's a great product and it'll be a lot of fun. Thanks.
Fantastic. Yeah. Welcome.
Welcome. Yeah, you're also with one of our other partners. You're with Cohesity. I see from the registration, so it's great to have you in the room as well.
Thank you for having me.
Steve, how are you this morning? And then we've got one person on the phone. I can't see who that is, but if you've dialed into today's session and you want to introduce yourself, feel free to come off of mute. I'm not sure actually how we would do that. I'm going to unmute you. Well, maybe we can try introducing if you're on the phone.
This is Steve with Lakeland Surgical and Diagnostic Center. I actually called in, and I'm also remoted into the Zoom. It's just easier that way. I don't have a mic. In technology, I don't have a camera or a mic.
We understand. No worries at all. Steve, it's great to have you in.
Thank you, guys.
What are you looking for today out of today's session?
Looking to streamline what we currently have. We have Horizon 8 desktops on workstation on wheels for the nursing staff.
Oh yeah.
So I just want to streamline it a little bit and see how we can improve on their experience.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, on behalf of XenTegra, I want to say thanks everyone for making time and joining us today. Really appreciate you, just showing up. So we'll do a quick round of introductions for Barry and myself, and then we'll kick off today's session with just a little background about who we are at XenTegra. Barry, why don't you go first? I'll let you introduce yourself.
I never get to go first, Bill. This is new. You caught me off guard. Good afternoon, everybody. It was actually afternoon for me. I'm on the east coast of Canada in Halifax, so it's 12:12 here for me. I'm the director of solution architecture for XenTegra. Fancy title. What that means is I'm involved in kind of behind the scenes from a technology perspective, orchestrating our solution architecture team to make sure the right architect is assigned to the right account for the right technology. That's all. That being said, I'm not just a paper pusher. I'm also a technologist. Like Phil, I have multiple VCPs, multiple other VMware certifications, and a number of other certifications with the nearest EUC competitor that starts with a C and ends in ITRIX. So I've been in EUC for too long. I got a few gray hairs to show it. But I'm excited to get through this workshop. Phil has put together a really, really robust, thorough, kind of a deep dive with labs to presentation. So I really hope you guys get a lot out of the presentation. And I'm going to be here as kind of a co-host with Phil, helping in the background, helping with the QA in the chat, and see how we go from there. So good. Thanks very much. Over to you, Phil.
Awesome. Thank you, Barry. And just a little housekeeping. Feel free to use the chat, the QA. We'll be monitoring those the entire session. So you can also just unmute yourself at any point. We really want today to be dynamic. We want you to get the most out of it. So, we're here to help and facilitate as much as possible. That said, I'm Phil Sellers. I'm one of the solutions architects here at XenTegra. Until about 9-10 months ago, I was on the customer side, and that's where I'd spent my entire career. Most of it. Focused in the data center space, was hands-on, started out as a systems administrator, very, very focused in vSphere. And like most folks, vSphere was a great intersection for a lot of different technologies because it was closely related to the network stack and to the storage stack. I kind of started expanding and working across all those different spaces. Like Jeremy, I think Jeremy was the one that said that he had some experience with Horizon View. We were an early adopter of Horizon View at my organization as well. We had both. We had Citrix and Horizon, and that organization is completely standardized on Horizon today. So we've worked through those transitions and been in that EUC space for a long, long time. So looking forward to unpacking what we've got today around user experience and talking more about how to deliver great outcomes for your customer. Let's see if this will work. For some reason, my slides are not wanting to go in the right direction. That's going to be a problem. But today's agenda, we're going to start out with a quick who is XenTegra. And then after that, we will dive into the meat of today's session. So let's kick that off. Barry, do you want to do a little overview of who we are?
I certainly can as soon as I stop coughing. Yeah, I said a big slug of coffee that went down the wrong pipe. So talk about timing, but absolutely. So yeah, obviously the people who are on this call have heard of XenTegra because you've registered for our webinar, and a couple of you have mentioned that you're already in talks with XenTegra. You're maybe a customer of XenTegra. So kind of a bit of background on what we are, who we are, where we came from. So the gentleman at the top right there, his name is Andy Whiteside. He's the president and CEO of VMware, or not VMware, of XenTegra. He started XenTegra back in 2012, I want to say it was, when he left Citrix, where he was, he was essentially a rock star sales guy, but he was kind of, I don't know, frustrated is the right word with the way the partner community was developing. So he decided to go out on his own and create what he calls the value added reseller 2.0. Kind of what that means is we kind of go above and beyond compared to your traditional VAR, who will transact products all day long, who will sell you a SKU, but doesn't necessarily bring the true value that's in a value added reseller. And that's where people like Phil and I come in, where we're not directly involved in the sales channel. We're not sales guys, but we're certainly technologists who can complement those transactional sales, I guess, for lack of a better word. So not only are VAR, we're also we offer consulting services. So someone like Phil and I would come in, would investigate your environment, determine I guess do an analysis of your environment, determine what's good, what's bad, and what's ugly, and then put together potentially a statement of work, and would bring into our whole different consulting division that would actually execute on that statement of work that Phil or somebody in our team would have designed for you guys. One of our kind of unknown secret weapons is that XenTegra also has a managed services division, an MSP. For the folks on the call who don't know what an MSP is, essentially we become an MSP is generally you take on your tier 1 support, your password resets, your I'm locked out of my account, but we can take that a little bit further, not just for VMware, but for many other products that you see along the bottom of the slide there, where we can do all the way from tier 1 to tier 3 support for all the technologies listed below. And it's worth mentioning, I'm not sure if we covered it in the slide later on, that the technical team within XenTegra have about 1,200 years of EUC experience. So, we can talk, but you're going to update your slide, Phil.
I do. We'll do that now.
On the fly. And the reason I know it's 1,200 years is because recently we all get together as a massive group in Charlotte a week or two ago. And there was kind of an informal survey done about how long we've all been in the industry. And we all got those gray hairs now. So we went from 900 years to 1,200 years as part of our expansion and our hiring. Unfortunately, I wasn't maybe able to make that trip because Air Canada does Air Canada stuff, and I couldn't get out of here. But anyway, so we're up to 1,200 years, which is crazy when you think about it, considering how kind of, I don't want to say niche, but how specific EUC is as an industry. You want to move on to the next slide, Phil, please?
Absolutely.
This kind of goes back to what I was speaking about earlier, where Andy was frustrated with the whole go-to-market strategy of a number of the VARs that were out there, and this is kind of our mantra, where XenTegra is born out of a need for customer-enabled and a true partnership, and we live and breathe the partnership, not with just our vendor partners, but with our customers who we treat as partners. In terms of the value add that we mentioned at the top of the call, we have these events that are completely free of charge. Anybody can join, can log in, and kind of soak up the knowledge that Phil is about to preach a little bit with me in the background. We also do an absolute boatload of in-person events. I looked at our events calendar a week or two ago, and we had something like 22 events in 20 business days, so more than an event a day. So, just go to XenTegra.com/events, look at all the events we're putting on, come on out, get out of your office, come into, a local bar, bowling alley, restaurant, wherever we're putting on events, pick your technology you want to learn about. Obviously, we're heavily focused on EUC, so it is probably an event that's right up your alley. So I really encourage you to come out. This is a VMware webinar. The 10,000 pound conference that's coming up is Explore, what it used to be called. Oh God, what it used to be called? VMworld. VMworld. Wow. See, they've brainwashed me enough now that it actually is Explore. So as part of our value add, we love to bring our customers to these conferences with us. You know, obviously we go to educate, we go to learn, we also go to, you know, network with the community, but we also like to bring our customers with us. So we do offer, you know, free or extremely discounted, you know, 90% off conference passes. So I'm not sure if the ship has sailed on VMworld yet in terms of availability of passes, but if that's something you're interested in, absolutely. I put my email in the chat already. Just shoot me a note and we can figure out if we can get you to Vegas here at the end of the month, and you can come sweat with us in 40 degrees Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, 100 or something.
100 degrees, yeah. 100 plus degrees probably.
Yeah, pretty hot. We'll leave it at that. Another thing that we also do that a lot of our you know, customers are not aware of, we offer free micro assessments. So $1 million question is, what's a micro assessment? That's where when you get a solutions architect or, you know, a seasoned veteran of the industry who will connect with somebody in your team for, you know, 3, 4, or 5 hours. We'll come in, analyze your environment. We'll have a look and kind of go back to what I said earlier. We'll generate a report of the good, the bad, and ugly. From a VMware perspective, we do this for both data center, so your vSphere environment, as well as your Horizon environments. Outside of the VMware ecosystem, we also do it for other partners: Citrix, Microsoft, Nutanix, iGel, Fortinet, and I know I'm missing more, but there's a whole bazillion of them what we do. So if you're interested in having a a micro assessment done on a particular technology in your environment, again, feel free to spam me. My email is in the chat there, and we're happy to connect and help out where we can.
And just running back to the VMware Explore conference passes, as of last week, I'd have to check this week, but as of last week, we did still have a couple passes available. So if you're looking for a sponsor to get you there and that would be valuable to you, please do reach out. We'd be happy to facilitate that for you.
And if you're afraid to contact me, all of our emails are this. Oh, Phil just put his in the chat there. I see now. I was going to say you can spam Phil as well. Philip.sellers@XenTegra.com. All right, bring us to our next one there, Phil, please. So, you know, XenTegra, you know, it's a fairly well-known company within the EU space, and I think that's kind of reflected here by the logos you see on the screen here. Like these are no small companies, you know. So Guggenheim, City National Bank, Duke Energy, these are all, you know, well-known companies that have chosen to do business with because of that VAR 2.0 that Andy invented, I guess, or coined, I guess, for maybe is the right way to say it. So these customers really see the value in what we bring to the table, not just in our transactional, but also within our capabilities as technologists, as consulting, and of course of you know, selling licenses at the end of the day.
Let's skip a slide.
Skip a slide. Okay.
Yeah.
So who's XenTegra? What do we do? So we offer solutions, we offer services, and we're also a reseller. So the solutions we offer, you know, are kind of, you know, our genesis is in digital workspace. You know, this is our, you know, our VDI, or published applications. As time progresses, that's obviously going to evolve. So now we're into the modern application practices. Think of things like ServiceNow. Think of things like Salesforce. We are partners with these major cloud solutions where we can, you know, help you out implement or even transform your existing implementation of ServiceNow. We can help you stand up a ServiceNow. You know, ditto for Salesforce. We also are doing a lot of work in cloud, not just, you know, your traditional, you know, AWS, ABD, you know, you pick a cloud. We're probably working on it with some customer. We're very focused on VMC and AWS, which is a big focus point for Phil and I specifically. We absolutely fell in love with the product when we heard about it, and we've kind of gone guns a-blazing down the VMware Cloud and AWS route, I guess. In terms of services, you know, we do offer consulting services. So you know, that's you know, block of hours kind of typical engagement, or, you know, time and material. You know, when you have problem X, we have solution Y, and we work together to make that happen, to bridge that gap and deliver the solution that's needed. The managed services we've already spoken about, which is the MSP practice we have that, you know, I really think is, you know, a bit of secret sauce we have that a lot of other, VARs, VAR 2.0 doesn't have, can't bring to the table, and advisory services. So I really see, events like these as part of that, falling under that advisory service where, the vehicle here is a presentation, but where, Phyllis said we'd love to this be more interactive. So if you have questions, ask questions and we'll give that advice. So this is where the advisory services comes in. And, we also, at the end of the day, the R in VAR stands for reseller. So we can sell product, we can do product renewals, we can resell cloud services at discounted rates, and we also offer cloud workspaces. So it's we cover a fair bit of the EUC portfolio. I think I could challenge most folks on this call to figure out where we're not playing in the EUC world, and it'd be a very, very small piece of the marketplace, I think. So we're well covered. Next one, Phil, please. We can skip this, please. Some of our cloud partners, I want to talk about that one. Some of our cloud partners that we work a whole lot with is Nutanix. We won't talk about that second guy right there. We'll save that for a different webinar. VMware Cloud, Office 365, or Microsoft. I don't know if it's called Gold anymore. It might be called Platinum, but Microsoft renames the partner tiers on a regular basis. Phil and I do a lot of work on Azure, and XenTegra is a Microsoft CSP. So we can help you transact with your Azure subscriptions. XenTegra staffing. This is another division. So we should have a slide here showing all the divisions of XenTegra. XenTegra staffing is something where we can help augment your existing IT group. So if you're missing some developers that you need to onshore and you're having a tough time hiring, that's something where we can step in and either give somebody off our bench who can step in and help you design your VDI architecture, or help you design an application or develop an application. So if you're interested in I don't want to call it temping, but if you're interested in augmenting your staff on a contractual basis, please visit XenTegra.com/staffing, where we can certainly help you out. So we spoke about the micro assessments earlier on. So these are the two we do specifically for within the VMware portfolio, vSphere plus vSAN. These are pretty straightforward things. We come in, we look at your environment, make sure that your vSphere environment is it's secure is kind of the big one we look at first, and it's highly available. So every customer is going to come to us with a different set of requirements. But that being said, we have a template we go through that we assess every environment against. And so at the end of the day, you're going to get, it's not quite an A, B, C, D, F report card, but you're certainly going to get a report that says, hey, Mr. Customer, you're doing, your cluster management is extremely well. You want to keep an eye on your storage performance because it's, and it may not be quite up to par for the workload you're running within your vSAN environment. With for the Horizon perspective, it's kind of the same idea. We look at things like, log on times, profile mapping times, end user experience. People seem to forget that the EU in EUC is for end user. At the end of the day, our job as technologists is to make sure that the end user has a not an enjoyable experience, but they can perform their job. Without us delivering the correct tools at the correct time, the business is going to suffer if the end user cannot compute. How about that? Next one, Phil, please. So some calls to action here. I encourage everybody on the call today, if you have some upcoming projects, just give us a call. Let us talk to you at the very least about, what you're doing in terms of, projects for the next quarter and the next 6 months, or even the next 18 months. So if you have upcoming plans you're interested in having a second set of eyes look at, by all means, give us a call. If you have upcoming quotes, renewals that you need somebody to assist with, not just for VMware, obviously, but across the number of partners that we've talked about already today, we're happy to have those conversations. It's only a phone call. We'll generate a quote, and have decided, it works, and we can start that business relationship, and we can go from there. If you're interested in demoing a product, if you're curious about vSAN, for example, vSAN is probably a good one. By all means, we can get on a call for 60, 90 minutes, bring you into our lab environment and show you the benefits of vSAN and why you would want to consider it versus some other storage architectures. And of course, services. So that's where the consulting team comes in, who can come in to your environment and get hands on keyboard and actually deliver services that's required for your business.
And
And
that's
just like that, XenTegra in, what is it, 8 minutes? How fast did it take me to go through that?
Yeah, we'll say 8 minutes.
Yes, I see. I talk so
Good.
fast. I gotta slow down.
So
So this is a good opportunity. Let's kind of open the floor a little bit. Anybody have any questions about what I rambled through there really quickly? Or you guys all eager to get on to, I won't say the more important stuff, but what? All right, Phil, I think they're waiting for you, my man.
all right. Well, the one thing that I would say is I discovered our superpower. Barry mentioned a couple of weeks ago, we got together as a whole company, a mid-year sort of kickoff. We get together in person a couple times a year, and then we have virtual check-ins a couple times a year. But it really occurred to me that our superpower as a reseller, as a VAR, is bringing our partners together. It's creating cohesive solutions for our customers. And some of those solutions may end up being multi-layered solutions. So it may be VMware plus maybe iGel, and maybe a partner like LG, someone you may not think of in the hardware space for thin clients. But it may be a layer cake sort of approach that we bring to the table. So if you're working or struggling to integrate partners and solutions together, that's our superpower. That's where we can certainly help you. So with that, we'll go ahead and kick off the meat of the presentation. So today's topic is Horizon apps and user experience. And so really today, we're going to be focusing on a couple different areas. We'll start with a little bit of recap of what Horizon is and how it works. But then we're really going to spend a bit of time on two more products in the Horizon portfolio. We're going to talk about App Volumes and Dynamic Environment Manager. And so let's start with that recap. So if you happen to be here for our previous Horizon 101, you would have gotten the deep dive on what the Horizon platform is. Some of us know it as View from back in the day, but really it's a Citrix competitor, and it is a full-featured way to deliver hosted and virtualized desktops and apps to your users. VMware beat competitors to the draw and had the ability to present these virtualized desktop and app environments in a browser. So that was big in the education space. A lot of education uses Chromebooks. And so now you could take a Chrome browser on a Chromebook and deliver a Windows application without the need for a client. That's one of the great features of the Horizon platform. But it works across multiple different operating systems as well. So you've got Windows, both desktop and server, Ubuntu, Linux, Red Hat Linux, and CentOS. One of the other great things is that Horizon's kind of a transformer. You can run Horizon on-prem. You can run it in VMC solutions, VMware Cloud Solutions on AWS, AVS on Azure, so Azure VMware solution. There's a solution on Google Cloud as well as Oracle Cloud. And, that list continues to expand. So you can run it in your data center or on vSphere in a hyperscaler. But VMware also has the ability to run Horizon directly against, DaaS solutions. So Azure Virtual Desktop. Horizon integrates directly with AVD, and it provides a level of management that AVD doesn't natively have. It also gives AVD users a better protocol than remote desktop. So you can use the VMware Blast Extreme protocol to deliver your desktops with AVD hosted in the background. In the same way, Horizon works with AWS and AWS Workspaces. There's a special flavor called Workspaces Core, where Horizon can integrate directly with that hyperscaler and provide DaaS as a service. And the great thing for you as a customer is you get choice. So you can do a pod that is in AWS, you could do a pod that is AVD, and you could do a pod that's on-prem or in a hyperscaler. And to your user, they know no difference. It's just delivering that service that they expect, the desktop or the application, and you as a technologist and operations person, you get the choice of where you actually want to run it. So that's Horizon at a very high level. On the right side, we've got Workspace ONE Access, which is a helpful user interface to deliver Horizon out to users, as well as doing SAML authentication or single sign-on type applications for your SaaS, as well as your Horizon environment. So that's another part of the Horizon portfolio. Again, we talked about that in more depth. And Barry, if you want to grab that YouTube link and pop it into the chat, that would be a great way of going deeper on those technologies while we move forward and talk a little bit more about user experience today. So user experience, I went out to the dictionary or the Googles in this case and pulled the definition of what user experience actually is. And it really boils down to the experience of the person using a product or a website or a computer application, and how pleasing and easy is it to use. And that's really our goal here, is to make a pleasing and easy to understand user experience for our users. So as we look at that, what do our users actually care about, right? So they want technology that's easy to use and understand. They want it to perform well. I think as a practitioner in the past, as I looked through support desk calls and things like that, it's slow was the most common sort of complaint that we had in environments in the past. And so performance needs to be on par with what a user expects from a local device. They also want it to have minimal problems. They don't want it to break, so they don't want it to be fragile. They need it to be available when they need it. And at the end of the day, they just need to be able to get their work done. I think about our healthcare customers. It's literally life or death if you can access the IT systems to see medical records, to treat a patient. Those things are super important. And then our manufacturing customers, at the end of the day, downtime is huge financial loss if your systems aren't performing when you need to be able to interact with them. So, an Amazon warehouse, for instance, if their systems are down and they can't process orders and fulfill, shipments, that's hugely costly to our customers. So how do we correct or how do we provide these things that our user cares about? Well, it really boils down to 4 key concepts. Our user experience needs to be intuitive, easy to understand, needs to be performant, needs to be resilient, and it needs to be available. Those are the real key factors from a user experience that we really want to talk about. So as we drive through that, how do we execute on these 4 pillars? Well, there's some complicating factors, right? We all know that Windows was created for this one-on-one sort of interaction, right? And inside of the VDI use case, inside of the app delivery use case, we're not really using that software the way it was designed. We're trying to do things that are new and different with it. And so we need help. We've uncovered new challenges as we kind of move through here. Most of us are used to managing master images. With those master images, you've got application updates, you've got user profile data. Even though we've learned to leverage these operating systems inside of a VDI or inside of our Horizon solution, it's brought up new challenges for it. And then at the end of the day, the user wants it to work the same way they would on a laptop or a desktop. So we can't make changes and can't implement things that change the way our users interact with this operating system, with this technology. And when they click on an icon, it should launch an application. We shouldn't have to redirect their user interactions, the way that they use the technology, it should be the same. So how do we deliver on those things? Digging deeper on those challenges, natively Windows is a persistent environment, right? So the way Windows is created, your user profile is on a local disk, all of your applications are installed locally. You know, you can have complications or conflicts between applications, incompatibilities. You know, all your user data is on that local hard drive, along with that nasty thing we know as the registry. The registry has all of those settings, all of those profile data. And so that persistent experience doesn't lend itself well to being a scalable data center delivered desktop environment. So we have to pair a lot of solutions here to make that outcome we're looking for, that good user experience, actually happen. So what are some of those things? Well, Microsoft has native solutions like roaming profiles and folder redirection, and we use those. But then there's other third-party solutions that exist to help us manage that profile data, that user data, and make it portable between systems. And so, you know, us being in the EUC space for a long time, we've got a lot of different tools in our tool chest to be able to address those solutions. And so today we're going to look at a model delivered from VMware, enabled in the same subscriptions as your Horizon, that will be able to help you deliver that great outcome consistently for your user, without also adding additional operational overhead for your teams. You know, every user in the org is different. Chase isn't here. Chase works on our marketing team. He sets up these events and helps do the registration and things like that. And I pick on Chase a little bit because, you know, every organization's got that one user that has a different app mix, right? And so usually it's a marketing person. They need some Adobe products, but you know, there may be one or two of them in the environment. So even when you've got two nurses in a healthcare, they may not have the same application needs. If you're managing your applications at an image level, it's really hard. You may end up with 20 different base images like I did. I think every time we acquired a company at my previous employer, we just created a new image and it had an individual mix of applications. And so we were managing 20 or 25 different base golden master images, and that's not sustainable. So what we want to talk about is a better way to avoid server bloat and deploying more and maintaining more of these base elements in your environment. So imagining a better way, right? Server admins want the ability to have a single or maybe two golden masters, maybe one for each operating system. App admins, they want tools to be able to update and test and release their applications independently. You know, the way that we've done it with base images and lots of base images, you've got to do an update for every one of those applications every time there's a release. Oh yeah, and then you need to test it to make sure it doesn't conflict and that you don't have problems with those other images. And at the end of the day, as we talked about, users just want the apps they need when they need them, and they want their data and settings to follow them to any machine. Well, the great news is we can deliver that with VMware. So a modern model for app delivery, and this is empowered by a technology called app volumes. You create a new clean base OS image. You add only the agents, the app volume agents, the DEM agents to the image, and then you package those applications independently from the OS, and then you abstract their user data and their profiles. Sounds very simple, but the devil's always in the details, right? It's always the details and the little technical use cases that often trip us up. So let's dig a little deeper in this. What does that modern app model look like? Well, it's enabled by the app volumes agent on your operating system, and we'll dig in more detail there. But a pristine operating system, your kernel level agents, along with antivirus, your at volumes agent, your Horizon agent, and then your DEM agent. And that really should be it could be as slim as that in your base OS. And then each of your applications can be packaged independently or can be packaged into a group of applications that are needed together. And then each application can be targeted to a group of users based on Active Directory or based on group membership inside of the app volume system. And then all of the settings get abstracted away and stored onto shares and then mounted in real time as the application needs those settings. And then we also take things like FS logics and folder redirection and pair that to store all of the user data from the profile. And so that's the model we're going to investigate today. So I'm going to pause there. Any questions, anything that we'd like to dig deeper into at a high level?
I'm good. Thank you, Philip.
All right, so if that's making sense, let's dig in a little bit more on app volumes. So what is app volumes? It is part of the Horizon suite. It's included in your Horizon Ultimate, Horizon Universal subscription. There's also a Horizon Apps Universal subscription that allows you to use app volumes independently. Now, why would you want to use app volumes independently, you may ask? Well, that's because app volumes not just a technology for VMware Horizon. So if you happen to be a Citrix user or an AVD user, app volumes works on those systems as well. So you're able to pair app volumes and the packages that you create across multiple different EUC delivery platforms. In the case with Horizon, there's stronger integration points. But if you happen to be a Citrix user looking for this kind of app packaging, I will say the VMware solution is several steps above and better than the app layering that Citrix provides. VMware touts somewhere between 90 and 95% of all applications can be delivered as an app volume. That's an extraordinary thing. We've been in this space trying to abstract our applications for over a decade. And a lot of these solutions have kind of fallen on their face. We start out, we maybe get to 50% of the applications that can be packaged. And that's where things kind of trail off. So there are really two major solutions out in the industry today, and app volumes is one of those two that is very successful in delivering packaged applications across multiple platforms. So first thing I wanted to say about app volumes is it's multi-platform capable. From a conceptual standpoint, how does this actually work? So we're going to kind of start from the bottom up. We have several concepts inside of app volume. So first thing is we'll use the term programs, and that essentially means the executable. So I'm going to use Microsoft Office as the example as we kind of step through these. So the individual programs would be Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook. And so inside of a app volume, we're going to package Office. That becomes our application, right? The application lives for a long time. We have versions and patches of Office, but we point our users at one thing, one element in app volumes, and that's the application. So it's called Microsoft Office, and then we can lifecycle independently from that. But the individual programs are Excel, Word, PowerPoint. And so those are the things we point to that our users actually execute. Now, the thing in the middle of those two is a package, right? And the package is a particular version of this application, of this set of programs. So think about this as like you may have Office 2016 and then Service Pack 1 is a package, and then Service Pack 2 is a package. And I know Microsoft's moved away from those, but for ease of explaining, think about it as different releases of those programs. So you would package Service Pack 1, and then when Service Pack 2 comes out, you would click the update button, create a new package, go in and prepare and install Service Pack 2, click OK, recapture all those changes, and that becomes a separate package. Now, what it allows us to do is basically work through, and this is a slide that would build out, but it allows you to build independent packages and then lifecycle them. So within app volumes, there's a concept of the current package in an application. So I've taken and created a group and entitled that group to Open Office here. That group then has, or that application then has a current package assigned to it. And so the current package is going to be 4.1.0. And so what we've done with that package is we pushed it out to test users. We know that it works. We feel good about that application. It's now our production package. So we tag it with a marker called current. And that marker is associated with our entitlement groups so that we can then lifecycle the application in the future. So now that we've got 4.1.13 available to us, we've gone through the update process and we've prepared it. We've tested it. We've sent it to some test users and entitled them specifically to that package. They've come back and said there's no issues. We're happy with it. Inside of App Volumes Manager, we'll go to that package and say, okay, set this one to current. Now, the next time our users log on to Horizon or launch one of these applications, they're going to get the 4.1.3 version of it. And everything in the environment has been independently updated. And all of our users across different operating environments, across different farms, across different data centers, have now moved to this new version, this patched version of OpenOffice. So it helps you with the workflow of your applications. It helps you with the testing patterns, and it keeps your image pristine. So those are the main tenets that App Volume delivers to make your operational life better. So we talked a little bit about that workflow. Dig into it just a little bit more. We create an application. That's our top level thing. I'm going to go back to the circle diagram. So the big circle, we create the application first. And then once we've created the application, we assign it out or entitle a group of users to that application. When we entitle it, we can either entitle them to a particular version or to that current marker. And so from a lifecycle standpoint, we choose the current marker to give us the ability to en masse update the application inside of the farm. Now, once we've created the application, the next step is to create a package. And so once we create the package, we want to install the applications. And so doing that, we will launch a workflow from the App Volume Manager, and then we move to what we know as a packaging machine. So a packaging machine is going to be a separate virtual machine outside of our Horizon or Citrix farm. And it's going to be basically for the purpose of doing installations, capturing all of the things, and then creating the package. And we'll walk through that in a demo before the lab so that you can see it in action. Now, once we begin that capture process, it's as simple as downloading your MSI, your EXE, any distribution. It can be an old install shield. AppV requires that you have to have an MSI to be able to create an AppV package. No such limitation with App Volumes. You can use any installation, no matter how you get the software. And because of the way that App Volumes does the capture, you're able to do that installation and the App Volume system is able to capture everything. So you do your installation, you click a button to complete the capture process, and then it's going to ask you to log off and reboot the system. Once you reboot and log back in, that capture process completes, and then your package is done. So the next step is really sending it out to test users. And for test users, those are the users you're going to entitle within your Horizon farm. They log in, they get the .next package in this model, and they go through and they see, are there any issues? They may have some automation and regression testing. We've got a partner we work with whose software, there's actually a couple in this space, do this automatically for you. So they can do the testing and make sure that all the test cases work properly. But once you feel good about the test case, then you move it to production. And you do that by going into the package and saying, click one button, set as current. And then at that point, that's pushed out to your mass users. When a patch comes around, we start the process again. We click an update button, it creates a new package for us for this next version, and then we start the cycle again. And so this is how we get the efficiency and scale to be able to push this out to the largest of environments. And at the end of the day, you see my little dancing happy app admins. This should make their life much, much easier. So I'm going to pause there. Does that process make sense?
It does, but I have a question actually. So everything we talked about here is creating a, not necessarily a net new application, but an application that we're going to have revisions over time. Can you speak a bit about the rollback process? If you push it out to UAT, it goes through testing, everything's successful, but then you do it en masse and you find this use case you didn't know about and the application doesn't work. How do you get back to the previous version so you can go through the testing again to capture that particular use case?
Yeah, so this is a fantastic feature of app volumes, right? So if you've had a bad patch, because I know we've all had bad software releases and we discover something that didn't come up during testing. So how do we get back? It's as simple as going back to the original or the revised package. So we'll go back to this screen. So we've released 4.13 of OpenOffice. Horrible, horrible bug. It's affecting everyone. We click on the 4.10 version. We click set as current. Everyone logs off and logs back on. They've got 4.10. So it's super simple to do rollback. It's not like managing this inside of an image. In some ways, I guess it is. You would have your snapshot to be able to roll back, but you're going to have to reform all of your app pools, redeploy all of those things if you're doing image-based. With app volumes, because it's independent, you go and click a button and the only activity is logging off and logging in again, and the user has the previous version back at their fingertips. The huge difference is you haven't had to change your master image or your farms of servers because you've now abstracted this away. Great question, Barry.
I have another one that I hope is just as equally great. I had a ton of experience, or I have a ton of experience with the old Unidesk product that became Citrix app layering. And it was painfully slow to package layers, I guess was what they called it. Can you talk a bit about how quickly you can package application leveraging the dedicated packaging machine within the VMware ecosystem? Is it faster than the Unidesk product, or it obviously depends on the application, but a Notepad++ or an Office, maybe you could speak to that a little bit?
100%. So small utilities like a Notepad++ or a WinSCP or FileZilla, those things package in under 5 minutes. And the most time that you spend is really waiting on the reboot. And we know how fast a virtual machine in vSphere reboots, right? So if that's the longest time, it's an incredibly fast process. I packaged Microsoft Office and larger applications like OpenOffice. I would say in under 15-20 minutes. The amount of time that the installer runs is going to dictate how quickly you can package. It is a user involved, user interaction required activity at this point. There are some automation utilities and third-party programs that can help you with the automation. And VMware has a very strong PowerShell scripting and some ways that you can interact and script these activities as well. So you have choices in terms of that. And you have multiple different pathways that you can choose. But in terms of comparison to app layers or even app V, it's simplified and much faster to package. It's also faster on the delivery, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a couple slides. But there's a couple different options in the ways that we deliver these packages. But this is really the kind of the central concept is what is a package versus what's an application versus what's program level.
Right.
So other questions?
Good here. Well, thank you.
Okay.
Just a reminder, if you folks have questions as we go along, you don't feel you want to interrupt Phil in his workflow, just use the Q&A functionality within Zoom. And I'm not afraid to interrupt Phil. I'll stop him and ask him your question on your behalf.
Yeah, just have Barry wave his arms and then we can all see it. So let's talk a little bit about the architecture. Again, very simplified architecture when you compare this to some of the other competing products out there. For me, one of the biggest hurdles when I started looking at AppV from Microsoft was the complexity required to do AppV. That combined with the fact that everything had to be an MSI to be able to do AppV. Here, we talk about the packages. That's kind of the central thing. You've got a virtual machine with the app volumes agent, the packages, and something we'll talk about later called writable volumes. Those get mounted to that virtual machine. Everything is controlled by an app volumes manager. We can either have a single app volumes manager, or we can do a highly available cluster of app volume managers. There's support for multi-site we'll talk about a little bit later, but conceptually the app volume manager coordinates everything. It talks to a backend database, your Active Directory, and your vCenter to be able to automate everything. So a couple points here. It is a VMware based vCenter and vSphere required solution. So that is the caveat for the other, EUC technologies is they must be running on VMware, with the exception of Azure Virtual Desktops. So this is the on-prem version. There is also a cloud hosted version. The architecture doesn't change much except for the fact that the App Volumes Manager, the database, is now hosted inside of VMware's Cloud Universal or Horizon Universal Cloud Console. And so that becomes a hosted service in the Horizon Cloud model. So design considerations. What are your best practices here? For high availability, we always want at least 2 app volume manager servers, preferably behind a load balancer. That requires a shared SQL server. An app volumes instance is basically dictated by that SQL server. So you can scale out beyond 2 app volume managers and load balance across more for scale. That is a possibility. We should talk about high availability for a SQL server as well. As a best practice, anything that's a kernel mode application should not be a package. It should be in the base image. So when you think about that, think about antivirus, think about any other agents, all of those things that have to be resident and should be available as soon as the system is booting. We use a concept called storage groups, unless you're using vSAN, to aggregate load and IOPS across your VMFS data stores. So packages are stored on the VMFS data stores. They can be very read intensive. And so we want to be able to spread that load and load balance. And so App Volumes gives us that capability using this concept of storage groups, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Storage groups still apply to vSAN customers if you're replicating packages. So the technology has the ability to replicate between multiple app volume managers, which may be in different data centers or clouds. And so, we still have this concept of storage groups even for vSAN use cases. So that would come up with like an AVD or a VMC on AWS as well. So
On
go
the
ahead.
storage groups, I know
Yeah.
you just mentioned, multiple data centers. Would that also apply if you had like multiple vSAN clusters within the same data center? Is that also how you would address that?
That's how you could address that as well. Yes, it is. So any kind of a replication when we're talking about vSAN at the at volumes layer, storage groups are going to come into play.
Phil, there is one other question, I think also from Germany.
Sure.
You mentioned that there's other products that can automate the app volume packaging. Any you recommend?
So we work with and partner with a company called Remo3. Remo3 also has, so I'll go ahead and do a plug for it here. If you're an SCCM shop looking to transition to app volumes, that's a strong use case for Remo3. They take packages created in SCCM and are able to automate the creation of app volumes from those. Remo3's claim to fame is really around load testing and testing in general of app packages. So it will give you the ability to go through, automate the packaging, and then automate the testing and baseline the numbers on that. So we do partner with them, and we'll talk a little bit about a program near the end that we do here at XenTegra in conjunction with VMware. It's a program called App Volumes On Demand Just Start program. And so that's a free kind of production pilot that we do, free to you as a customer, funded by VMware and Microsoft, that Remo3 could also, as an option, play in to help you get started with all of those technologies. Great questions.
What'd you say that program was called again? I'm sorry.
Remo3, R-I-M-O.
No, the thing with VMware and Microsoft for getting started.
Yeah, it's Apps on Demand Just Start. We'll drop a link here in the chat for you.
Thanks.
Absolutely. So there goes that link. Any other questions? These are great. All right, so go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there's no other questions, so we're ready to rock and roll. Just looking at the clock, Phil. You want to take a little break, give everybody time to grab some chow, get a drink, use the bathroom?
Let's get through a couple more bullet points on the slide, and then we'll take a quick break. So perfect. Last couple of best practices here. We want to place the packages with the applications on storage that's optimized for read, because these are going to be read only. Writable volumes, when we get to that, we want to put that on random IOPS, 50-50 read, 80-20 read, write type devices. And then we should think about how to package our application in as few packages as possible, because there is some overhead as we talk about the architecture and as we look at the demo. We'll look at that a bit more, but again, just like we would do with image-based application management, we would think about what mix of applications needs to be there based on a user persona within our organization. So those are the last best practices, and that'll close us out on this slide. So I think it's a great place for us to take a quick break. I know I could use some water.
Okay, so it's 12:09 my time, 11:09 time for everybody else on the call, I think. Why don't we come back at 11:15, 6 minutes? That works?
Sounds great to me.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
All right, I think we are at time to be back. So we'll kick off here again. Any questions after break? If not, we'll keep driving. So sizing limits and recommendations. So, again, we talked a little bit about each app volume manager instance is really based around the SQL database. And so as we talk about an app volume manager, each instance has been tested for up to 2,000 concurrent logins. We can sustain 1 every second login rate, which is pretty good. In terms of concurrent logins, the number of AVM, so the number of managers, the CPU and memory dictates how many we're actually able to sustain. So we can scale up by putting additional front-end volume manager VMs in front of the database. So the number of VMs is going to dictate, how we go. So at a base layer, if we've got 2 per pod, we're going to be able to go up to about that 2,000 number because failover and things like that, each one of them supporting 2,000 independently, but in a failover condition, we want to make sure we don't exceed that and overrun a single server. For 2,000 to 5,000, we would scale out to 3, from 5 to 750, or from 5,000 to 7,500, 4, and then beyond 7,500, we would add 1 for every 2,500 users. And then this is, of course, sitting behind a load balancer. Within the architecture, you also have to scale your CPU and memory accordingly. And then you can see the number of logins we can sustain per second based on the different numbers here as well. So in storage limits, again, we talked a little bit about this before in a previous slide, but we want to limit the number of packages delivered, but 8 to 10 packages per VM is sustainable. And then up to 1,000 users per package is also sustainable. And so that's on the storage side. So as we scale out and replicate the storage and balance users across different packages, individual files, and think of the VMDK file here, we want to make sure we have enough of those to also sustain it from a storage standpoint, because again, it's very read intensive with these read-only app packages.
Phil, you mentioned it'll be behind a load balancer. Does it care, what logo is on the load balancer, whether it's an F5 or a Citrix, or does it matter?
It does not. It can be, NSX advanced load balancer. It can be F5. I'm drawing a blank on another one, but Kemp, and any of those really works. And so there is a knowledge base article on VMware's site that we can point you to that talks about the health checks. So, I mean, it's completely architected for a load balancer of any kind. It's got the health checks. It's got the ability to know, what's, there, what ports need to be redirected, all of those details to facilitate good load balancing.
Philip, I have a quick question.
Sure.
Cloudflare.
Mhm.
Are we able to leverage Cloudflare as a load balancer?
So Cloudflare is going to be a little tougher because it's a cloud-based load balancer, you'd have to expose the app volume managers to the internet to be able to make use of it. So
Okay.
Cloudflare, what we normally see is customers load balancing and geo load balancing endpoints to the data center. So I'm not sure that Cloudflare would be the best choice for the app volume architecture. I would try to keep most of the app or all of the app volume internal to the network.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Great question. All right, so if no questions about sizing and limits, let's go to the 2 modes of operation. So this is another big concept for me. So up until version 22.12, I believe it was, or 2206 of app volumes, there was one mode of operation, and it was the classic mode. And so what happens is in classic mode, your package is loaded on the computer startup or during the user's login event. So everything that the user is entitled to would be loaded during that login, and you would see all of the applications as part of the operating system. So you would go into add remove programs, you would see all of these app volumes show up just as though they were locally installed on your image. And that's classic mode. With 2206 and higher, VMware has introduced this on-demand mode, and you see that I've chosen a little clicky cursor, the little pointer for this one, because it changes the way that the app volume mounts. So now the user would see the icons for the applications, but the app volume, the VMDK, is not actually mounted to their session. It only mounts when the user asks for the application. So when the user clicks on Notepad++, it's going to dynamically mount that VMDK to their VDI or to their remote desktop server. And then it's going to stream and load that application in real time. So the on-demand mode has the advantage of only loading the bits when requested. It can help you drive further density. It also speeds up logins because you're not having to do those mount activities during user login or during the computer startup. So on-demand mode is something relatively new. And as we mentioned, the Jumpstart or Just Start program is really centered around helping you with the on-demand, although you can certainly use it for classic mode. You can mix these two modes, which is great. So I think a great use case would be an application that all users use, like Microsoft Office. You can package it and deliver it as a classic application so that it's persistently available at all times. And then you can take, individual or lightly used applications and do them as on demand. The other benefit with on demand is that you can target that specifically to users. So I mentioned Adobe products. So if you needed to do Adobe Acrobat for certain users who needed to edit PDFs, but you didn't want to license and you didn't want to load this software for everyone, you can take a group, you can make it on demand, and you can target it at that group and know that you're in compliance for both your licensing agreements, and you can limit the number of users you actually need to license at the end of the day. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question, Phil. So I get the concept of on demand where it's going to speed up your logon times because you're not mounting the files on logon, but eventually they're going to have to be mounted when the user clicks on Notepad++. So can you talk a bit about what kind of a delay that introduces by the time I click on Notepad, by the time the VHDX mounts and the application is available to me as a user? Is it perceptible, or is there actually a known delay?
So there is a bit of a delay. So 1 to 2 seconds is what I would say in general. And during that time, what you actually see in the user interface is a pop-up that says your app's loading. So the app on demand agent pops up. So there is something to show that that activity is happening in the background. To me, it's a more than acceptable delay, especially for lightly used applications. So during the demo time, you'll get a chance to see that. I've got it mocked up, and we'll make sure that everybody gets a chance to kind of see that interactivity. We'll also look at the fact that on-demand mode, when you load it up, if you've got all on-demand applications, you'll see the icons for the applications on the desktop. If you go to add and remove programs, they're not there until you actually do the click and load. So once it loads the application, then you go back to add remove programs. It looks like it's an installed application at that point.
Okay, so once I've clicked on the application, it loads. I'm finished working with that application. I close the application. The second launch of that application within session should be immediate, yeah?
It is immediate, absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
There's no load time, there's no delay. And then during user log off, those mounted VMDKs actually get unmounted from the system. Yep.
Thank you.
Absolutely, great questions. So a little more, how does that actually work? So we talked through this, but your app package from the App Volume Manager, you request the application package, it talks to the App Volume Manager, it goes to vCenter, makes a call, or it actually can go directly to the vSphere host. There's a mode for that, although there's no real reason in modern app volumes. It used to be faster to talk directly to the host. Today, app volumes, it doesn't make a difference. And then the App Volume Manager calls out through vCenter to the host to mount the VMDK. Only difference between these two modes is when they get mounted. Do they get mounted during user logon, or do they get mounted on demand? That's really the core of the story. Now, VMware is really good about reusing names, reusing some things to just confuse us. So there is something else out here, and it's called Horizon Published Apps on Demand. This is a little different. So what we just talked about was how it works within a desktop session. Within Horizon, there is actually an integration point between App Volumes and Horizon's connection servers. So once you marry your Horizon connection server to your App Volume Manager, you can go directly into the applications and choose apps from the App Volume Manager to publish. And so what does that actually look like? I'd like to show you. So let me pull up my Horizon client. Is it on another screen I'm not seeing? I don't know. 1 second.
We're not seeing it, Phil.
Yeah. Let me get out of that. Nope. 1 second, because I don't see the window. And that's because I'm blind. It was here on the other screen the entire time. So this is the Horizon client. If you haven't seen it in the past, I'm going to log in here. And so when you do Horizon Horizon published apps on demand, these are all published apps on demand. So basically, you get the icon, it looks like a published app. There are a couple different modes in Horizon, but the integration with App Volumes is one. I've got a remote desktop farm that has nothing but the App Volumes Manager, no applications installed on it in the background. It's going to pull from App Volume Manager the package for Notepad++, and then it's going to go out and mount that to one of my remote desktop farm servers and then launch the application. I'm just looking across screens to see where it's going to show up. And then it becomes a normal published app at that point. So you have multiple different ways where you can interact with it, and then you move it around independent, just like any other published app. So you can mix and match these. So these, so Notepad, WinSCP, all of the open office applications are published apps on demand. And then I've got my Excel, my Word, my Office suite as a traditional published app inside of one of my VDI images. So there's no limitations. It's just an additional way that you can handle your published apps within the Horizon suite. And again, it's the desktopless applications. It just looks like it's running natively on your machine. So it's pretty simple to set up. Like I said, you create your instant clone farm of remote desktop servers. You register your App Volume Manager with your connection server. You associate the manager with a RDSH farm, and then you just create app pools and publish and entitle those applications to users. So once again, another way of leveraging the technology. What's also great about this, and I don't have a slide for it, you can do the same thing with Citrix. So in a Citrix farm, you take and basically change the executable to point to your App Volumes client, along with the application you want to run, and it will do the same thing in Citrix. I'll actually show it. So this is one of the differences. If you're working directly with the VMware team, they can't demo. They're not allowed to demo on Citrix. But with us as a partner, we're able to do that. So this is my Citrix workspace. Notepad++ is a published app on demand here in Citrix as well. And so it will launch and start here in just a moment. A little bit of a delay. You see that it's going through and logging in and doing all of the things to open my session for the first time inside of the Citrix server. And then I've got windows popping up on the other side. You will see this little guy, the app delivery is in progress. This is what I talked about in terms of the app delivery. And then you see the app on demand has loaded, and it's again the same desktopless app experience. So both in Horizon and Citrix, you can get this general user experience. Any questions there?
So Philip, just to kind of be clear, I got a little distracted. Are you saying that within the Citrix workspace, we can launch, I guess, published apps in VMware and Horizon?
You sure can. So you can take the app volumes, integrate it with your Citrix farm. So you still need a remote desktop farm that lives in Citrix.
Correct.
But then you can do published apps to the app volumes. So I've run into a number of customers that have both Horizon and Citrix in their environments.
Yep.
This gives you a way of using the same app packages in both. It gives you a great way to migrate between technologies as you repackage and re-architect if you're moving from Citrix to Horizon. It's a good bridge technology as well.
So I guess it's not necessarily, it's a temporary solution as opposed to solutionize an issue.
It doesn't have to be, no.
Right.
These same app packages can be used in published desktops. They can be used as published apps in both Citrix and in Horizon as a long-term solution.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Phil.
Absolutely. So there's one more use case. So we talked about the fact that packages are read-only. So what about that use case of that pesky developer off to the side who needs to run his own applications, his own things he's creating? How do you do that in a non-persistent VDI? Well, that's where writable volumes come into play. And so often writable volumes are gonna actually be paired with Dynamic Environment Manager, which I know we haven't talked about yet, but we will. But writable volumes is a technology inside of app volumes that allows you to mount a VHD that your user gets to control. So this is where they can install their own applications that moves between machine and machine. It follows them and the packages are read and write. So they're able to create their own user environment. It's not so much for like customizing their data or their profile, but it's more around giving them the ability to install their own applications and have those move from VDI or remote desktop server. So again, the use case is user installed applications for writable volumes. So they've not been deprecated yet. We've got a question from Robert. They've not been deprecated yet. I don't know that the official guidance is there. It's still within the current products, but I can follow up and get you an answer about the future. The use case is pretty narrow. I will say, you know, within persistent and non-persistent VDIs, it's a pretty narrow use case. Any other questions? So we talked a little bit about this as we've explained the technology, packages and storage, their interaction. Packages are stored on your VMFS or vSAN data stores inside of a vSphere cluster. We've got the concept of storage groups for high availability. The storage groups are used to replicate your packages across multiple different storage devices. You can also use it to provide resiliency against storage failure. You can use it to replicate across storage arrays, or like someone asked earlier, across vSAN clusters. Storage groups can also replicate across volume managers. So in a multi-site design, you have a special non-attachable type of data store that can be used to replicate data across sites. There are two automation options. So you can automatically do the replication, or you can manually sync the replication if you don't turn on automatic. And then there's automatic import as an option, where it will take the app volumes that are replicated across VMFS data stores and automatically import them into your app volume manager. That's useful in multi-site replication. So if you create a new application package on site A, that data gets replicated because of storage groups to site B, but site B's app volume managers don't know anything about those packages until you do an import or a sync or a rescan process on the app volume manager. It's not going to populate those as available applications. So the automatic import solves that across multi-site replication. Trying to think, from a storage perspective, I mean, again, we want to make sure that there's resiliency. So as a best practice, we will want to have a couple of different data stores so that you have the ability to do resiliency. I still feel like a picture's worth 1,000 words. This is a multi-site replication sort of example. We'll talk through this. Site one, load balancers in front of your app volume managers. They're pointed out to an external SQL database. They're working against the vSphere host and vCenter. And then we've got storage group number one. And storage group number one's got two data stores in it. So depending on your policy, you can have all of the app volumes on data store 1 and 2 sync so that you've got two copies of it. That way, if anything happens to one data store or the other, perhaps they're on different storage arrays on the back end, you would have the ability to survive that data loss. With the multi-site, like I said, we have this special non-attachable data store number 5. We've put it in there and it's allowed to capture and have all of the data for the purpose of replicating to site 2. But it's not attachable, meaning its only use is for replicating those bits between the two sites. In site 2, we've got another storage group. It's got data store 3 and 4. Same sort of concept as storage group 1. Everything on 3 and 4 is replicated between the two. So this is how we achieve larger pods and larger scale outside of a single data center. So from a scalability standpoint, multiple app volume instances can be combined and load balanced. We've seen that. Multiple vCenters is a way to scale for larger Horizon pods. We talked a little bit about scaling Horizon pods in the Horizon 101 workshop. So you can find that in the YouTube video. Multiple AD domains can be used across site with or without a trust configuration. So that's good. You don't have to have a trust between your AD domains in order to do this. There's also an option to do this without domain. So there's a non-domain joined entities setting that can be set in the app volumes manager if you don't want to base this on AD targeting. At the end of the day, your vSphere storage greatly affects the ability to scale out and to provide great performance. So as you talk about app volume managers, your storage team, your storage resources should be a big consideration as we move through an implementation of the product. Load balancing, pretty simple, right? We talked through this. Barry had the great question about load balancer requirements, and we talked about it on the scale slide. So this is sort of the way it looks at a high level for high availability. The only place that you're required to do a load balancer is sitting in front of the app volume managers. This is per pod. And so we are able to get that redundancy necessary within each individual pod of infrastructure. And when I refer to a pod, that is the Horizon terminology for, a group of delivery servers within a data center or geography. Database design, I mentioned this already, but from a high availability standpoint, this becomes critical infrastructure when you're delivering it at volume managers. So we believe you should have high availability options for your database. Two of those, Microsoft SQL Server always on availability groups. This is going to be two independent Microsoft SQL servers replicating at the SQL Server software layer. But say that 10 times fast. It's a little tongue twister. But always on availability groups allows you to do it at that software layer at the top. It's probably the preferred way, but certainly failover clustering for Microsoft SQL is a valid way of providing high availability. Failover clustering, which use the same shared storage on the back end and have two servers sitting in front of it, both capable of running your SQL server. So it's a more traditional way of doing high availability for Microsoft SQL. It still applies here as a completely valid option. Single service audit's required, but again, good design often goes beyond what the requirements are. Just remember that this database is really kind of the border for your app volumes manager instance. Again, you scale out with more app volume managers at the front, but there are also some knowledge base articles around sizing your database appropriately that we can point you to and that we can help from an advisement standpoint. And that brings us to demo time. So I'm going to pause there. Any questions before I launch into a demo?
I don't think there's any open questions, Phil. I think we may be ready to rock and roll. Get some hands on keyboards.
Awesome. Well, let's do this. We're going to walk through this together. So App Volume Manager, first of all, I don't think we said it earlier, but it runs on a Windows operating system. It integrates natively with your Active Directory during the installation. So you will specify who your main administrator is. You can add additional administrators once the system is up and going. For a small POC, it does package SQL Server Express. So you're able to get hands-on from a single installation. So we're going to log in with AD credentials. My domain is all passed down. For any storage techies, I'm sure you're laughing a little bit at that. Super techie domain name. So again, high-level concept, you see it across the tabs here in inventory, applications, packages, and programs. So at the high level, we create these applications. These are placeholders for entitlements to our users. And so all of the different applications here, they're going to live forever. They're going to be the thing that we entitle in Citrix and in Horizon. It's our integration point, and then the packages will change as we patch and update, and then the individual program mix can change. We can add programs to packages in the same application from an application volume standpoint. So we've got the applications here. Then you can see we've got individual packages. You can see the current marker that I was talking about. And so some of these have, previous versions. So like FileZilla has been updated from 3.64. This is the older version to 3.65, which is now the current version. If I click into one of these, you can see that I can unset it as current, which effectively unpublishes it. If I go back to 3.64, you can see I can set this one as current, effectively rolling back my environment from the newer package to the older package. So that's some of the life cycle standpoint. We'll walk through packaging a full app here in just a moment. And then you see under the programs, all of the individual executables, the different versions. We've got Notepad ++ 849, 853, 854. And we've actually got multiple versions of it in different packages. I've got one for Windows 11, another update in the Windows 11, one here that I know is actually for Windows Server OSs as well. So
Phil, let me ask a question while I think of it. Going back to the on-demand delivery method, just say, 8.5 of application X is the current version, and I have not clicked on the icon of that desktop, and 8.6 comes out that gets published in the back end and promoted to current. Will I get 8.6 when I click on it as an on-demand user?
absolutely.
Got it. That's sweet.
So it's going to go out directly to the app volume manager and pull based on that current allocation. So yes,
That's fantastic.
It's one of the great advantages for on demand. The other thing is that it can help us drive more density on our remote desktop farms in particular. We should be able to load additional users and density because we're not only loading what we need, so it keeps a more clean and pristine environment. So here on assignments, you can kind of see I've got different Active Directory groups for entitlement, and you see that this is Visual Studio Code, for instance, the current version. This is the package, this is the application where we entitled to. So some of them are to individual computers. We've limited, and so you have the ability to say, I only want this package to be on servers that match this naming scheme, for users that are a member of this group. So you can also look further into the package and see that this is for Windows Server 2016. It's FileZilla 3.65. This is the 2 locations because I've got a storage group that's replicating it in the background. You also get a full application log, so you can see the administrator updated it, imported it, set the marker, all of those kinds of things. So you've got auditing built into the package as well. So one of the things we talked about is lifecycle. If 3.66 of FileZilla had come around, updating it is as simple as clicking update. It creates me a new package here. So we'll call it 3.66.0. You see that I choose the delivery method here. We'll choose on demand. And what it's going to do is it's going to take the existing package, and it knows that these two are linked together, and it's going to create me a new package, and then it's going to wait for me to actually do the packaging function. So you'll see now 366 is sitting here. It is unpackaged as a status, and we'll come back around to that in just a moment. So what I'm going to do now is actually launch into my vCenter environment and log in real quick. So all of my different virtual machines are here. I'm going to use this RDSH template. I'm going to boot it up. What I've done in the background is I've taken a snapshot so that it is at a known clean state. So before doing any app volume activity, I start out with that snapshot, because at the end of the packaging activity, the packaging workflow, I'm going to revert back to that snapshot. So as soon as this guy is loaded up, still booting. All right, so now that it's loaded up, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to log in, and we're going to look around. So 2 things. We want to have a user used for packaging that's not entitled to any app volumes. And then we want to have a clean, pristine environment that doesn't have any of the other agents except for the app volume agent on it. So we want it as clean as possible so that we can capture all of the changes that an installer makes. So we'll look at the add remove programs here. You'll see that we have the app volumes agent, and basically nothing else is installed. Very, very clean. So we're going to close that. I'm going to go here to FileZilla, click again, and there's a button for package. This is the next step in the workflow. And here under the status, you actually see that it's giving you helpful tips about what to do. So I'm going to go ahead and click package. It's going to ask me to find a packaging server. I know mine is called RDSH template. So I'll click that and then package. And then when I click start packaging, I'm going to quickly switch back to my remote desk or my console view so that you can see what happens on the remote desktop server. So here we go real quick. Start packaging. And then you see an app volumes message here on the side. So we're now ready for everything to go. So first thing I want to do is go back to that programs view. You see that FileZilla has been mounted. It now looks like FileZilla 365 is loaded here. This is a bad demo for me because I don't know if 366 is actually out there. This is pretty bad. So we may end up not being able to do anything. Okay, so 365 is still the current release. Let's see if there's anything else newer out here. Let's go ahead and let's add another utility. What's a good utility that I could add to this package, Barry?
Putty.
Let's do Putty. That's a great one. All right, so we'll go to download. Let's pull down the MSI for Putty. We'll open the file, close the browser, go ahead and do the installation for Putty. And then a couple things that I do just as a, I like to do it this way. I'm going to go in and look at the public user profile. And I'm going to put a Putty icon on the desktop. So right now you see we have a FileZilla. I'm going to go ahead and find Putty here on the machine. See program files, Putty. I am going to create a shortcut and send it to the desktop. Now that you see is not on the public desktop. It's on my individual profile. So I'm going to grab it over and then we're just going to rename it Putty. And what that will do is in the app volume, it allows me to have this icon mounted on the user's desktop every time this package is attached. So it's an easy way. It will also be on the user's start menu, just as you see it here in the packaging machine. But for some of these applications, if you want the desktop icon, you put it in the public user's desktop folder. So now we're done. That's packaging. That simple. So as I said, I'm slowing it down here. You see that Putty is now, if we open programs again, it is here in the add remove programs. And if we're done, we click OK. It's going to prompt us. Installation is complete. Yes. It's going to ask us some questions here. Putty is here. FileZilla is here. This is how we get the program items inside of App Volume Manager. We hit finalize. It'll pop up and ask us to reboot. And then it asks us to log in. Click OK to restart now. And once we're back up and logged in, it will complete. So if we toggle back while it's starting, you'll see that we're in the packaging phase. If I refresh this, we're still in the packaging phase. It told us where to go, which server to go to for the next step in the process. So it's walked us through that. So even an inexperienced operations person should be able to follow the steps. Very straightforward. And now that I've logged back in, it's going to pop up and tell me, okay, we've finished, we've collected everything, now revert to that snapshot. And so we'll revert back. That way, no artifacts are left in this packaging machine's registry after the packaging was complete. And so there you go. Packaging successful. Please revert your virtual machine to the last known good configuration. We go back to App Volume Manager and we refresh this page. You now see that it's packaged 4 minutes on Windows 2016. And we have FileZilla and PuTTY both in the package at this point. So is this live to my users? No, because it's not the current package. So for me to make this the current package, we can illustrate this by launching a couple different desktops. So I'm going to pull back over my Horizon client. And I'm going to click on the demo desktop. Actually, I'm going to make one change because we put PuTTY in somewhere. I'm going to unpublish the PuTTY so that we don't see it. It was its own package. So demo desktop, launch that out. Because we're on the 3.65 version, we should not see PuTTY here. Because we didn't have that. We should see WinSCP, which is enabled, LibreOffice. We'll see FileZilla show up, Notepad++, but no PuTTY, right? So once again, this is the Horizon published. Same thing would be true for your Citrix published environment. So if we go to programs, these are all on demand, and voila, none of them are showing as actually installed at this point. So what happens when we click on one of them? Let's go to Notepad++. And you can't see it, but in the background, it is saying that it is launching our application. And that's the delay. So really, really low delay. Once again, we're not changing the way that the user works. You get one additional prompt here in the lower right of your screen, and a ton of benefits in terms of maintainability. Now, if we go back into program files or add remove programs, you'll see that Notepad appears to be installed. So that's the magic of an on-demand package. It only shows up once you've actually launched it. Now, I need PuTTY. We've put it into the FileZilla package. How do I get it? So I'm going to log off. We're going to move back to App Volume Managers. You will see under the application for FileZilla that we have 365 as our current, 364 previous, and 366, even though it's not. But we know that we also added in PuTTY here. So all that I need to do is expand this one, or I could click on to the package. Either way, you get the Set Current button. So I'll click into the package, click Set Current. And now we can move back to our Horizon client, launch, and PuTTY will be a part of our environment. And that's the icon that we prepared. We'll have the same delay. It's loading the application. There's PuTTY. Very, very, very slight delay. Now, we don't have the same prompt again because FileZilla is in the same package. But if we were to launch one of the applications that's not in the same package, like Notepad++, we can go over here and we'll get the prompt, and then Notepad++ comes up. Very slight delay, maybe a second, maybe two at the most. And then, like I said, lots of benefits for maintaining your environment. So the update process is essentially the same as creating a new package. The only difference is that when you're creating a new application and package, you've got a wizard here. It's going to give you some options. We can call this application X, which now actually, I guess, exists since Twitter's been rebranded. You get the option to create a package or not create a package here as you create your application placeholder. We're going to go ahead and create an application X package. That becomes the next step in the workflow. So we'll call it app X version 1.0. It'll ask you to create a new package. There are some templates. So by default, the template is a 20 gig VMDK that we mount to install the application into. You can choose classic or on demand. You hit create. And then if we look at the packages, AppX 1.0 is being created. We'll refresh. It's now unpackaged. We click into it. We click the package button and follow the exact same steps we just used for an update. The only difference here is that when you start with the pristine image. We won't start with the FileZilla already installed. So you start with a pristine package and start layering on your application at that point. I'm going to pause there. Questions about creating packages and how the workflow works?
Not so much a question for me, more of a comment. I'm blown away of the simplicity and the speed of this compared to, I'm going to call them the legacy layering applications I've used previously. This is, it's extremely cool.
It's funny. VMware's got another technology called ThinApp in the portfolio. This reminds me of ThinApp with workflow. So ThinApp was very much the same way. You had a packaging VM, you used normal installations and it collected everything. And then it created an exe file that you put onto a share to run the application. This is a little different in that it creates a VMDK to package the application. But the win for me is all of the additional workflow. So it walks you through the steps of packaging, it walks you through life cycling your applications, and it allows you to have the benefits of being able to scale in the future.
Yeah, we're coming into that. I was pretty concerned about the user experience on, clicking on the icon, wait 5-10 seconds. That's a non-starter, but the 1 or 2 second delay, it's not ideal by any means, but it's certainly usable. And once it's launched, you can access your application, as many times as you want within session. But the time saved in the back end for the administrator is significant. Significant.
It absolutely is. And on top of that, if the delay is a problem for you, you can use this in the classic mode.
Classic, right.
There's no delay with classic mode. It's just part of your load sequence.
Yeah. A question on the actual package. Once they're built and finalized or published, can you switch it between classic and on demand, or do you have to rebuild?
So if you create it in on demand, what I'm seeing is you can toggle between the two. If you create it in classic, I am seeing sometimes that the on demand, you can't toggle to on demand. But the great thing is if you've got a classic package and you want to toggle it to on demand, you can use the update functionality that we just walked through. You're not required to make changes to the package once it mounts in the packaging machine. So you can create a new package as an on-demand package and move it that way. So for folks that have app volumes today and they're looking to package and make use of on-demand, that's a migration path for them as well.
A follow-on question to that is, the applications we were looking at today are fairly light, like the notepads, the putties. What about a thicker, heavier application, aka a larger application? Does that impact the time to launch it? I'm really, really interested in the on-demand functionality. I think that's a game changer here.
It's not. Every one of these packages is a 20 gig package. I'm going to go in here. LibreOffice is not exactly a ultra small or optimized application. It takes it a minute. You see the app delivery happening, and then LibreOffice will start the load. It's about a gig or more, but the delay is negligible.
Yeah, because they're all built into that 20 gig package or container that you created at the start.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
Got it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Great questions. Great dialogue.
For the lifecycle part of this, like your application X that you created the application for, and then you created the package for 1.0. And kind of like what we saw with the FileZilla thing, if like 1.1 comes out and I'm going to update it, I go in, I push the update on the package, I make a new one, it brings in the 1.0 version, I can update it, I have 1.1. When say 2.0 comes out, if I want to do that as a fresh install, not as a I updated 1. Whatever, my understanding from the way you describe the applications, that's still going to live under the same application umbrella.
Yes.
Can I start a package and not pull in the previous version?
You absolutely can. So
Okay.
right now I'm in the FileZilla application. So the same one that we used to lifecycle, you can use the create package here and create a new package. You can also choose from the create package, one of the previous packages to update from. So you absolutely have that ability to choose a brand new package. So if you want to start fresh and still keep your, same entitlements, your same tree for the application within app volumes, you're completely able to do that.
Okay, and then for updates, I can use any of those base packages, not just like the latest version.
Correct.
So like I'd have, so like in this example, I'd have my FileZilla 3. Whatever, 3. Before I've moved everybody over to say 4, 3.7 comes out, I need to get that update in for the people that are still on that version. I could go do that with that base, and I could also go take my version 4 and do the 4.1 or whatever update there, and have both of those in parallel.
You can, absolutely.
Okay. So I have fonder memories of the legacy product that we choose not to name than Barry does, but I will admit that was a pain point. If you had that, you could really only have one chain going at a time of things.
Yeah. One of the other things too, it doesn't help you with conflict resolution. So if you need 2 versions of the same application, it's not ideal for that. But it does help you, we've targeted assignments based on the current tag, but you don't have to do that. So you can, I've got users in here, so I'll just go find user 01. Well, he's disabled right now, but you can do the domain users based on an assignment type of a marker or based on the assignment of an individual package. So if you do have users, one of my colleagues used an example of, living through the IE days, and you had certain applications where IE8 was the version that application ran in. Maybe you have an Access 2010 application, a horrible example, but you could target that particular version to a user who needed it, separate from the mainline current marker of a package. So you have that ability to make it more granular where needed. Great questions. All right, so I'm going to toggle back. Did I hit all the things I said we would do? I think I did. So this is a great point if we want to take a quick 5-minute break. It's been another hour. We will resume again at 16 past the hour. We'll give you 5 minutes, and then we'll dive into Dynamic Environment Manager, which is going to be pretty quick. We'll talk about the architecture, and then we'll start with some labs. All right, and we are back. So let me see. Thanks everybody for hanging in there with us. So we've spent our world talking about apps for the first part of today. Now let's talk about profile management, and it's really kind of a misnomer to talk about Dynamic Environment Manager as a profile management solution, because I guess it's a much better way to talk about it. It manages user settings. So when we think about profile management, there's a lot of different products out there that kind of help with this problem. And most of them try to handle the entire user profile, including the user's data. So they collect everything at a very high level, package it all together, write it to a remote share. And that's really not the approach that VMware has taken. VMware has taken a very granular approach when it comes to user settings and profile data. And they've chosen purposely not to get into the game of managing the user's data. So they're reliant on traditional things like folder redirection and using things like FSLogix to handle the folder and user data portions of the user profile, while they focus on being able to be a lightweight way of injecting user settings and all of those things into the user environment. Now, just like app volumes helps you ease the profile load, the login times, Dynamic Environment Managers also got that goal in mind. So they're trying to be a very lightweight agent. We'll talk about the architecture in just a bit, but the goal is really to make the user login quick and then be able to inject the necessary settings at any given time based on different triggers in the environment. The approach is solid. The one thing I will say is when you see the UI as you go through the labs today, you're probably going to be jarred and go, oh my, is this 2007? The DEM console is a bit dated. I think that's the only knock that you can have on the product and the approach here. It does look like it's got that UI of like Office 2007 when we first met the ribbon and everybody had the bright fluorescent looking colors. So outside of that, Dynamic Environment Manager is a really, really good solution for handling your user settings. So let's dive in. So DEM is a profile management. It captures the user settings from the operating system and the applications. And so this is the other side of making a non-persistent VDI or a non-persistent remote desktop session feel persistent, making sure that we get those settings so that a user doesn't have to set it every time they log into a new machine. DEM captures the settings that an administrator specifies. So it's not going in and doing a heavy lift of everything in the environment. It's not capturing the whole user profile. And then once they're captured, they can be dynamically applied at a program launch. So that's one of the key differentiators here too, is the triggers functionality within DEM. So if a great use case I've talked to users with is Adobe again. Creative Suite needs a license to be applied in a corporate environment. And so you can set a trigger that when Photoshop is launched, you need to apply this script to inject the license into the user session. And so it doesn't do that at login. It does that when triggered at the application launch. So that reduces login, logout time because there's less data that needs to be loaded. Again, it's a just-in-time sort of approach, just like your app volumes apps on demand. So from a user perspective, you've got your settings stored in Dynamic Environment Manager, all of your personal data, again, with folder redirection or technologies like FSLogix. From an application standpoint, we're looking at, locally installed, remote desktop delivered, or at volume delivered applications. And then Windows gets to be a pristine golden master image underneath all of this in the new model. So there's two modes of configuration. We've got Active Directory group policy based. And then there is the ability to use a no AD XML. So two different ways that we can roll out DEM and control the settings. So this is the master configuration for DEM. And then once this is set, then the DEM console itself is able to go in and dictate all of the additional changes. Just like, and again, repeating the theme again, where does it work? We can use it in Horizon and Horizon Cloud. We can use it in CVAD and in DAS from Citrix. We can use it on remote desktop servers as well. One of the other things I didn't show here, and I'm going to change this slide after today's session. You can also use it with physical computers. So it's not just your virtualized computers, but DEM can also apply to physical workstations as well. At a high level architecture, this is what we're looking at, and I closed out of my notes, so I'm going to get those back up while I'm talking. At a very high level architecture, Dynamic Environment Manager has a management console, and most things are stored on a management share. That management share is really the heart of the DEM environment. And so we'll go through all of these components real quick. So as we mentioned, you've got your Active Directory and your Active Directory group policy. That's the mechanism for configuring DEM. You've got ADMX templates that are provided with the product. If you want to go the non-AD route, you don't need the GPO. You don't have to write login and log off scripts. You just have a simple XML file that is used for configuring DEM. In addition to your central IT share, where all of your settings for the individual users are going to be loaded, you've got a profile archive share, assuming that you're using a technology like folder redirection here. So both in the central IT config share and in the profile share, you're assuming that you've got network folders for each user to be able to store all of their things. In the light blue box to the left, you'll see the thing that's gluing it all together is an agent called Flex Engine. So underneath the covers, Flex Engine is what's doing the heavy lifting for you. This is the agent. It resides on your virtual desktop server, your RDSH server, your physical machine. That's really the functionality of DEM. So one of the things that you'll notice on screen is that there's no database. So everything here is database-less. It is based on the configs, and the user settings are being stored off on a share. So I know there are competing products in this space. It works very similar to Liquidware's solution, Profile Unity, with a couple differences. Again, this is focused just on the user settings and not on the profile data itself. There are some support tools that exist to assist with your support desk to reset or restore profile settings, to be able to do analysis, and there is a log file viewer for individual users as well. The initial config is going to be a combination of both your DEM management console and something called the application profiler. The application profiler is a utility that allows you as an administrator to determine where application stores their configuration data in the registry and file system. This is really important for creating and specifying what settings and how you would like those captured. So DEM can manage settings from applications that have valid flex configuration files in the configuration share. There are some self-service tools as well for users. That is a capability. It's optional. It's not something you have to deploy. And then not shown on here, but there is an optional component to support physical PCs when they're offline. It's called Sync Tool. Sync Tool would allow a laptop user, for instance, to be able to pull their configuration from the config share and then synchronize it back and forth so that if they're not always on the corporate network, or if they're in a limited bandwidth scenario, that they're still able to be fully productive with all of their settings. There's also a feature, continuing with the flex naming, called Direct Flex. It allows you the option to import application settings at the application startup. And we talked a little bit about this. So not necessarily during the login event, but actually triggered based on application startup. Direct Flex is going to allow you to pull those settings during that time. So it's a great combination between app volumes and DEM technology to be able to handle, lightly used applications or specialty type applications within your environment. So some of the benefits from a DEM perspective. Faster delivery, you reduce the login times due to the just-in-time immediate application of settings. It's a very simple architecture, single file share. You can do things to replicate that. There's some great resources and articles about utilizing DFSR to replicate this across a distributed environment. We also have some alternatives. I know there's probably a knee-jerk reaction when I mentioned DFSR. So we work with another third party that's able to do replication against DFS namespaces to replace DFSR if that doesn't work for you. There's multiple different architectures from a filer perspective. If you have filers in your environment, beyond that, it can easily scale up to 100,000 end users. Because again, it's a pretty simple architecture. There's not a lot of moving parts here. It really is just reliant on file sharing. And again, it points you to individual application settings, not loading an entire profile at one given time. It's based on triggers. It's dynamic. Really is a much more lightweight way of managing this. It's hard to demo, frankly, so it's easier for you to walk through in a lab. So in lieu of a demo for DEM, really would like to kind of pivot in towards our lab time. So I'm going to pause here. Are there any questions about DEM? I promised it would be quick.
I do have a question. I'll go first. I'll be the brave one. You mentioned I don't think it's going to be a big use case, but the no AD XML. My question is, how do the VMs know where to locate the XML file for the configuration without like a GPO pointing them to a directory where the XML file lives?
I believe in the no XML, the XML is actually located on the client machine. And then it dictates all of those settings and everything else required for the environment.
Got it. That makes more sense. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my voice is starting to leave. So I'm going to pivot us into lab time. Everyone should have gotten a pretty short email from me. There's a couple lab modules, and I've certainly taken a lot more time covering the topics today than I intended to. Is it really 1:30?
It sure is.
Wow. So my apologies. I did not leave you a lot of time for lab, but I'll go ahead and pull this over. So You should have a link. It should bring you to a page like this for the hands-on labs. So getting started with app and desktop virtualization is the name of the actual lab from VMware. If you click take this lab now, once you're logged in, it will load your environment, and I may not be logged in. There it goes. So quick tour of the lab environment. You've got your lab guide off to the right here, and it's going to load a virtual console for you here in the hands-on lab. What you're going to want to do is go up to the top right, click on the table of contents, and then the modules that we're going to do, because this is a much larger lab environment, we use the first half of it for our Horizon 101. So you can choose to go either to module 8 or module 7, and we can dig in on at volumes or dynamic environment manager. It's your choice which lab you'd like to go into first, and then you can start from there. So it'll walk you through all of the individual things. So you can just use the left and right arrows to go through, and it'll walk you through all of the different scenarios along with some additional education. So if you did not get the lab link, I am going to post it here in the chat as well. And again, you just need a customer connect login. If you're a VMware customer, then you already have one of those. If not, the email had a link where you can sign up for a login as well. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing. Barry and I are going to be here. We're going to go ahead and stop the recording for today. And then if you have any issues or questions, please pop them in the chat or take yourself off mute, and we'll be glad to help. For our folks watching us on replay, thanks for your time. Thanks for joining us. And we hope to hear from you. If you need any assistance, easiest way is you can reach out to sales@XenTegra.com. Otherwise, you can reach out to Barry.Brown with an E at the end at XenTegra.com, or Philip with one L .sellers@XenTegra.com. We both make it a little challenging with our emails, don't we?
Keep them on the toes. Keep them on the toes.
So for everyone watching the replay on YouTube, thanks for joining. And for those of you here live, we'll be here to help you with the labs.